Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody. I think we have a fairly full agenda today. So if possible, we're going to try to move things along where it's appropriate. But if it works, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. So I think first we'll have the roll call.
Sure. Clenny.
Here.
Lemons. Here. Pantera. Here. Rush.
Here.
Magnuson.
Here.
All board members present.
Hey, I believe we have a few introductions and some other topics.
Yeah, I thought I would do some intros because I have a lot of new staff, or staff that's new to the board and board that is new. There's some staff that are in the room to present. So I want to make sure that Phil also knows who will be leading what part of the discussions. So when we get to policy review, it'll be Kate Bradford, who is our information and home-based supervisor. She's also our interview services supervisor, so she'll be doing policy review today. Strategic planning will be Gates Marquez and Jamie Lundergreen. Gates is a lead library assistant at our Hillcrest location, and Jamie is our communication and customer experience manager. We have an interim FY23 budget change, which will be Kim Nakamura, finance manager. And then our new business, we will be talking about the library website redesign, and that will be Carrie Hall, who is the Deputy Director of Community Engagement, and Alex Winkler, who is our Chief Information Officer with Becca Gray, for backup in any questions that may come up. So for staff, if we could I just ask you guys to do you did the roll call, so everybody knows this is Rebecca Lemons. We've got Natasha Rush on video, Nikki Pantera, Phil Bags. Okay, great. Just wanted to thank you. So get a chance to see some names and faces with some of the staff that have not had the chance to present to you.
Good. Okay. First up will be approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Is there any discussion of the minutes or a motion to approve?
Go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes from August 10th.
Thank you.
Second.
Brian's second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Next we have the consent agenda, which is the payment of bills and payroll and a financial report of the library. Any discussion?
I did have one question.
Sure.
On the payment of bills, when we circulate reports for trustees to sign, the bills not get paid until the trustee's signature on the form. Anybody know that?
For the bills that come to you each week,
Yes.
the checks, that is the case. P cards, it's usually after the fact.
Because
kind
it's
of-
immediate transaction.
Exactly.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anything else? We have a motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
A second.
Second. All those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. The consent agenda is approved. Okay, we'll move into the reports of some of our partners. Jill, I believe you're here from the Friends.
I am. Thank you so much. Good morning. We have a really milestone event yesterday in that City Council approved our MOU with the library in the city. So that was fantastic. And we also had a proclamation that this week is Friends of the Boise Public Library Week for the city. So welcome to my week, everybody. Please don't send me any bad news. Gifts are okay, you know. But anyway, no, in all seriousness, it was great that the city took the time to recognize the 50 plus years of the Friends and the more than $3 million that we've raised and put back into the library system. So we're pretty thrilled with all of those developments. We had a sale in the middle of August. We raised just over $13,500. So that is fantastic. And then one of the highlights of being on the board that I hadn't anticipated was twice a year we offer scholarships to library staff who are continuing their education. And I have to tell you that those essays and applications are such a ray of sunshine. And our board was thrilled this week, or at our meeting last week, to approve scholarships for 3 library staff who are getting graduate degrees. So all good news, and that's all I have for today.
That's fantastic.
Great. Congratulations on your special week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian from the Library Foundation.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me. I'm trying a new way to do this on my phone now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So in the past month, probably the most significant thing that has occurred is that the foundation was able to cut a check for $40,000 in sponsorship of the Boise Comic Arts Festival. So we're very happy and thrilled to be able to contribute in that way on that event that will be taking place this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. One of the things that the foundation wants to do and that we are going to be doing is that we want to be present as a sponsor there to raise awareness of the foundation and our mission and our goals and so forth. So we will be there front and center as people walk in to be able to greet them and to they'll see our banners. We made some banners specifically for this event that will raise awareness and so we can raise some friends, raise some awareness for the foundation and our mission. Also, the foundation will be selling posters at the event on Saturday at the zoo, and so we will be able to also do a little fundraising at the same time. So that will be a nice little start going forward, so that we can raise more funds to the foundation. So it's a great weekend, great opportunities for the foundation, and that's pretty much all I have.
Well, that's fantastic. Your contribution is going to mean a lot to the community. So thank you.
We're excited. Thank you.
Next up is the director's report. Jessica.
Thank you. I just have a couple items that I want to share with you. First, I'm really pleased to say that we have an update to the summer reading information that was in your packet. When we put together the information for your packet, we had distributed 4,537 books through summer reading, which was a great accomplishment. But since then, we've actually distributed 1,000 more as people have finalized their reading logs and their and came back and got additional prizes. So our updated distribution, we distributed more than 5,000 books. Obviously, the Friends were a big contributor to that. And that was an increase of 54% from the previous year. So we're really pleased to see that continued engagement. To get that last book, you had to really read for the whole program. And so that incentive seems to be really successful this year. And a real testament to the summer reading team that really put together a program that, though was longer, engaged more people over time. So really wanted to highlight their work as well. September is library card sign up month. So we're really making a push on our social media, in our newsletters to really get as many people a library card. And we also put together, there were a couple new resources that we've added to your packet that are helping people really understand how to find materials that are right for their families. So really focusing on how do we help parents and caregivers really understand how our collections are built and how we like to work with parents and caregivers to make sure that they're finding the materials that are of interest to their kids, that are appropriate for their families, and really gives them the ability to maximize the use of that library card.
Finding books, flyers, were they created by the library? It really is, I think, an outstanding piece of work. I was really impressed.
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely a team project. We've got great input. Joni Hansen, who's the supervisor out at Bound, was really lead to that, and Jamie Lundergreen also was the person who helped us. Librarians tend to use our own vocabulary, and so we really needed some outside readers to make us not use library jargon as we were trying to explain how we do collections, so thank you.
Nice job. Well done.
They are printed at every location, and we're also getting them loaded on the website as well. Sorry, did you have?
Yeah, I was just curious about the library card sign up, if it's possible to do any kind of outreaches. You know, like, it's a good time to go to schools and say, hey, get a library card.
Yeah, we've been doing social media. We'll follow up with some of at the end of the month with, sort of what we did to promote the in-person social media. And then also sort of how many we got this is the month in September that I'm really curious about. It is, like you said, sort of that back to school push really gets us a lot of opportunities. So we'll follow up on that. I think it's a great question. On a continued note about staff shortages, unfortunately, we will be reducing some of our hours in September at our Colin Ustick location. We will be moving, this Saturday will be curbside only. And then beginning Tuesday, September 20th, we will be closing at 6 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is us needing to adjust sometimes when we just don't have the staff to cover a building that large. We're working to hire and onboard staff as quickly as possible, and we'll update the community when we are able to return to the longer hours. When we do need to reduce hours, we make notice on social media, in our on our phones, on our website, and then also on the building itself. And as Brian Manship mentioned, this PCAF starts on Friday. We're really excited about this. Have just a phenomenal program. Friday will be Librarian and Educators Day. Saturday is Zoo Boise. I don't know if you've got a chance to see the video that was the library mascot meeting the Zoo Boise mascot and how fun that was. Sunday will be our panels and workshops at the Idaho History Museum here as well. And I just want to thank all the staff and volunteers who are making PCAF X the best PCAF yet.
I signed up to volunteer Saturday at the zoo, so I'm super excited to get down there.
We are very excited to have you join us as a
I was like, give me a board badge. I'd be happy to like.
Yep, we've got those on order.
So
We will have
excited to
a
come
board.
down.
We'll get you a name tag just for the day too.
Okay, anything else?
No.
All right.
I had one, just, I guess, question. You mentioned that there was additional funding to increase access to materials and services with written comments.
Yep.
Was that in addition to the budget we submitted? In other words?
That is the budget that was approved.
Okay.
Yeah. It goes through, after you approve that request, it goes to council. They had their hearing, they had their first, second, and third reading. And that final reading on the 30th was what approved that budget.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning this City Club forum that's coming up. I think apparently there's a groundswell of opinion from a segment of the population that our list of books is too broad. And so I think as trustees, maybe we should be watching that, trying to understand how we would navigate that or how we feel about that. So there's in here, and I think there's been some email going around about a forum that's being held on the 23rd. It's listed here. It's on page 4 of this list. You haven't seen that yet. Okay, anything else on the director's report? Let's move on to the policy review.
Okay, so we have section 8 for the policy review this month. Displays and exhibits includes policy 8.01 displays, regulation 8.01A display cases, regulation 8.01B display form, and then policy 8.02 bulletin boards and regulation 8.02A bulletin board guidelines. So your packet includes the staff recommendations on all of those pieces. Just a reminder that the staff have made recommended changes on policy 8.01A displays and policy 8.02 bulletin boards, and a motion to approve, revise, or reject the recommended changes will be requested for the changes to regulation 8.01A display cases and regulation 8.02A bulletin board guidelines. Those don't require board approval and they're for information purposes. So the changes made are for clarity, ease of use for users and staff. And then after last month's meeting, staff worked with legal to develop a criteria that can be neutrally applied to determine whether an item is appropriate for display or posting. So are there any questions, comments?
So observation, it looks like the changes and additional comments made address all the discussion we had at last month's meeting. And I think it's well done, good work on those. Looks very clear and concise to me.
Great.
Yeah, we did discuss this last meeting, and yeah, the staff has gone through it a second time. Is there any other comment, discussion?
I was just gonna say thank you. I appreciate taking a look at it and going back through, and I reviewed and it resolves the questions I had, so.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll make a motion that we approve the submitted policy changes.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the policy changes are approved. Thanks for all the work that went into that.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, next up is our strategic planning, and we're ahead of schedule, so now.
No pressure.
I won't get up too fast. Yes. Well, brilliant. Again, I'm Gates Marquez. I'm the lead library assistant at the Hillcrest branch. I'm also the chair of our community engagement work group for the strategic plan. And Jamie and I are super excited to be here while Heidi Lewis is out of the office this week to give you an update. I know. We'll see what happens.
I haven't yet, I'm trying to.
I know where we're at. All right.
Gives us a little extra suspense.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Hey Greg, can you enable screen sharing, please?
Oh, he's still on there.
I'll text him.
This is fantastic to have Alex at this meeting. She can.
Well, I'm glad we're ahead of schedule.
Well, while they're working on that, we can go out of order and I'll put in my comments. I think the team's done a great job. It was really obvious in this last meeting that a tremendous amount of progress has been made. And I was somewhat astounded, I think, on like the number of responses that came into the survey. So obviously a lot of good advertising went into that. And I would just I think we've said this before, but I would reiterate that a big theme that I think I hear from a lot of people is that the library is doing a great job and everybody's trying to figure out, well, how can we reach more people with the things that are going on? And I think that's a big part of it, is just trying to continue to get the library into people's consciousness so that the staff can continue to provide the stuff they do, which is great. I'm convinced that people don't understand the resources that are here on a lot of different vectors. And so I would encourage the team to keep going. It's going to be very, very interesting to see the synthesis of all the data, because it looks like there's a lot of data to go through. So I would say just keep plugging away at it, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm happy to go out of order while we're waiting to, part of our agenda is a steering committee meeting update from August. So I can go over a little bit about what we discussed without the slide.
You may need to speak up just a little bit.
Sure, thank you. So the August steering committee focused on reviewing the outreach and engagement efforts up to date at the time. And we asked the steering committee to help look at any gaps they might be seeing in that engagement and ways we might fix that moving forward. In particular, our conversation revolved mostly around the summary from our two amazing BERT consultants, Luis Herrera and Susan Hildreth. They shared a summary of the 20 interviews that they conducted with board members here, council members, mayor, and other city library leadership. Really, those interviews were centered on how the library can best position itself. Best position itself to have positive impact. I'll just skip ahead here. We'll come back. To best have positive impact, so including top issues facing Boise, housing, mental health, and literacy came up. They identified current strengths. There was widespread appreciation for library staff and praise for our flexibility handling services over the pandemic. Those interviews also identified some opportunities to address Boise's growth through expansion of our outreach, having a more diverse, larger array of library programs available. And I'll take this moment to pause to Phil, if you have an update from the steering committee meeting that you'd like to add, and if Councilmember Howie Burton is on the call and has some takeaways to add as well. This is a good time for those.
I said what I was going to add in.
I don't believe Howie Burton is on today.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll backtrack now. Our agenda, we'll go over, we'll just touch on the timeline a little bit about where we're at now. We've obviously already discussed the steering committee, and then Jamie and I will get into the preview of our community survey results, and then some quick next steps at the end. So quickly, as you can see, we're at the tail end of our phase 1 engagement efforts. The last thing we're doing here is we're wrapping up those community partner interviews within the next week or two. Once all those notes are submitted, then a summary will begin for phase 1. So we'll be analyzing all of that data from the listening sessions, the interviews, the survey, et cetera. And you will have an update at your next board meeting about when to expect that summary report.
Now I will take it over for a little bit. So first we're going to go into a little bit more about who we heard from, but just as a reminder, we had the survey open from July 14th through August 31st, gives the response numbers, and a huge thank you. It was a huge team effort to get all of those responses. So thanks to all of you who helped us spread the word. Thanks to our staff who, promoted it at story times, tabling at events, through bookmarks or conversations with our users, or even if you just got people in your household or bothered your friends or family members to take it, thank you. We exceeded our goal for the number of responses. So really exciting to start diving into that data. There were 22 questions on library vision usage and services, and then we did have, as Phil mentioned, 11 open-ended questions. So there's a lot of rich data there that we're currently working on going through and reading all of those comments from our community. And then we had the 12 demographic questions as well. So I'll make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, so we're just working now on going through all of the amazing and interesting feedback that we got from the community. So here are some snapshots of who took the survey. We had, as far as zip codes, a pretty good distribution. So you'll see the highest represented zip codes were 83702, 83703, 04, and 06. So I was super interested in this as the communications manager because we did work on a few things with the Office of, I'm part of the Office of Community Engagement to target different zip codes to try to get a balance. And then the library team as well tabled at some events strategically in neighborhoods where we wanted to make sure we were getting good representation. So we were tracking this as we were going to make sure that we were trying to get as distributed a feedback as we could on the various zip codes. And then we also had a demographic question around race and ethnicity. We had just shy of 80% that identified as white.
Do you know what the Boise demographic is?
We were just talking about this recently. So one of the things we'll be doing in this analysis phase is looking at how our demographics match to the larger Boise community on all those different 12 demographic questions. So I think actually that but I don't know for sure, it's actually, I think it's slightly higher than what is represented in our survey, the number of people who identify as white, but we also gave in every demographic question an option to say, I prefer not to answer. So that also kind of shifts things a bit too. I don't know off the top of my head. That is one of the things we were looking at. And then we had just shy of 10% identify as living with a disability. For age ranges, we had a pretty good distribution there as well, except for our under 20s, but our highest age group was that our responders were in the 31 to 40-year-old age group. And then this one just wanted to highlight, so we did offer the survey in English and in Spanish. And this is some work that I was really proud of our team, is that we, sometimes it's been difficult with surveys in the past to get some of the responses in Spanish, just because trying to make sure that to reach the right folks to give them the opportunity. And we actually did get, I think, more than in recent history of some of the other city surveys. We had 18 responses in Spanish. We ran a Facebook ad that was really successful in Spanish, which is great. So even though it's fewer than our English responses, it's still a good start and still gives us some interesting insights, and we'll be working and incorporating that into our data analysis as well. And so something interesting to highlight here, this is the question around, do you have children in your household? And so our Spanish responders, our responders on the Spanish survey had more children in their household than in the English version of the survey, which was interesting. So like I said, we're still working through all of that, but we were pleased to see that we were getting some responses there and making it available in other languages to reach more people. So hopefully continue that work moving forward too. Okay, Gates, turn it to you.
Awesome. So now that we know who has taken the survey, I'm excited to give you some highlights about what they said about the library. Do keep in mind that we did ask several open-ended questions during this survey, and those we have not dug into yet, of course. So these are really just the high-level themes that we're seeing come out now. All right, so I'll give you the top three here. Community members strongly agreed that a public library supports early childhood education and literacy, enhances the quality of life of our residents, and provides universal access to information. I'm going to try and get through these pretty quickly, but interrupt me if the ellipses make it confusing to read. I have noted some of the ones that are that might not be super coherent because of that. All right, we asked Boiseans about challenges in the city and what role the library should play in addressing those challenges. As you can see, access to education is a clear priority from community members, with open space, mental health, unemployment and underemployment, and public safety rounding out that top 5 there. Just a quick note about the open space one. We worked with other survey content from the city. Originally, that was an open space and land use, like a responsible land use. The preliminary speculation is that people are interpreting it as open spaces in the library, public spaces, meeting spaces, that kind of thing, which may explain why it ranked so highly. We also asked people to prioritize library services, those top 4 being physical collections, early literacy support, which we saw a little bit before, access to technology, such as our computers and Wi-Fi in the building, and then digital collections. So strong push for digital collections here, or collections in general here. We are pretty confident we got good responses from all of our locations. It's no surprise that our, for physical locations, our higher circulating ones, Bound, Colney-Stick, and Maine, have the highest usage here. Some things to note, we did have about 3% who indicated that they don't use the library at all. Similarly, there's a large chunk there, just under 10%, that indicated that they use another public library in the area. So they're getting our materials primarily through our consortium. Another group of interest is the 5% who indicated that they interface with us online only. So they are primarily using our website, our digital collections, or our digital resources. And that group will come up more in our website redesign discussion later, but definitely a group to note. So for those folks who said that they either did not use the library or they used a different library in the region, we asked them what discourages them from using Boise Public Library. As you can see, almost 50% of them hit other. That is one of our open responses that we'll definitely be digging into a ton. And so we want to definitely get more detail there. The other top 2 are that the locations are not convenient, and that they indicate they do not have a need for library services. I would be remiss as a public facing staff member if I did not talk about the bottom 2 scoring results here that show that a small number of people said that they feel unwelcome at the library, or that they don't use the library because it takes too long to get materials. At a high level, I am pretty reassured personally that we seem to be successful at creating a welcoming environment and that we are getting materials into people's hands in a timely manner. Those are definitely some day-to-day things that it seems like we're succeeding at. Continuing on our warm note, this is the last highlight I had for y'all. About 85% of our respondents said they think we're doing very well or pretty well at serving our community, and just under 5% saying that we don't serve the community well at all. So it's a really encouraging starting place to move forward with creating our strategic plan. All in all, we have a lot of responses to dig into, but super excited about the turnout for this survey, and that we appear to have a really solid reputation and foothold in the community right now. All right.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
I don't have a good zip code map in my head. The zip codes that you identified in the survey, do those obviously encompass Boise? Do they represent space outside of the Boise city limits as well?
I believe
Some of them
bleed
do.
out.
Yeah.
But most of that's within the city limits?
Mhm.
Okay.
Some of them, I think it is there are a few, like it's been a minute since we looked at the zip code map, but I think, like, I want to say off the top of my head, 1483714 spans into, like, some of them get kind of close to Garden City, and
But the majority of them are within the city.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so with our next steps, of course, all that data will be analyzed. Like Jamie said earlier, we'll be comparing the demographics that we see in our survey to the overall Boise population, and seeing where there may be some gaps in people and where we got our input from. We'll be analyzing quite a few open text responses, such as where folks see the library making the biggest impact, some recommendations for extended offerings or where we can extend our offerings, and just overall details about where we can do better as a library. Like I said before, the community partner interviews will be wrapping up this week and next week. And then you will get a phase one summary timing update at the next board meeting, when to expect that summary, as well as what to expect for phase two.
Thank you for the preview. Looking forward to the synthesis.
Me too.
Yeah. Were there any other questions? Or
No, thank you. Okay, the budget topic.
So I'm Kim Nakamura, Finance Manager, and continuing on the great work of the strategic planning process is a quick little discussion on the fiscal year 23 IBC. And the IBC is an off-cycle budget request for items where we need an additional appropriation, which may not have been included during our discussion and overview for the fiscal year 23 budget. So this particular item is for the strategic planning process, and it is to request a one-time additional appropriation for $75,000. Now, our fiscal year begins October 1, so we don't currently have a budget for the strategic planning process. But what we want to do is bring this forth to council and ask for the appropriation, so that way, come October 1, we can make a smooth transition from phase one and into phase two. So the item before you is just to request the additional $75,000 to our budget. And if approved by the board, then we will forward this to council for their October 11th council meeting for consideration.
One question would be, is that enough? You know, have you had, I think this is going to the consultants, right? So have they given a budget estimate, and is that enough?
If I recall from conversation, this is a step one, and that we may be coming back to you once we have further information on phase two and the cost of phase two. I understand that currently we are doing some internal.
And this was actually, I should have followed up with you. I was confused when we talked last week. This is to finish phase one with our consultants and to build the time to do the bridge, to come back with the phase two.
So is there any phase two money in the proposed budget?
Not at this.
Is it worth trying to do one request for more money, or there are too many variables?
I think with the way the fiscal year ends and not wanting to have a drop, we're running into a wrinkle with, quite frankly, the end of FY22 and the start of FY23. And ideally, we would have been able to do that, but in order to not have, in order to always be able to have that consultant support, this is the best solution we could come up with to bridge the end of phase one with the end of fiscal year 22.
Yeah, as Jessica was mentioning, there is kind of a timing between when we close out fiscal year 22 and we can get re-budgets that say end of fiscal year 23. So this was a more straightforward way to request additional funding so that we could continue seamlessly from one phase into the next.
Do you have any kind of forecast yet of how the library will exit this year in terms of total spending? Like, are we going to be way under or way over?
I can say that on the M&O side, that we are forecasting to be fairly well spent out. I think the library staff has done a great job on planning and reviewing the budget. So on that side of it, I think we're good. And then on the personnel, we do have a little bit of savings. As Jessica mentioned, we have some vacancy and some, filling of the positions. So we'll have savings there. But unfortunately, we as a library cannot use that for other purchases such as
Just
towards this.
trying to understand.
Is this related at all to the schedule slip in phase one, the incremental cost?
You know, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I'm not sure.
No, I would, I think we did a good forecast of what we thought phase one would cost. We've also went in with it's going to be iterative and we're going to be, like, that's why we had the phase one and then the phase two. We really were intentional of not trying to do it all at once. And I do think the guidance that we heard really loudly from you about take the time you need was important. We've also had some really good discussions right now, which is why we don't have phase two scoped out, of what capacity do we have within the city, like, you know, bringing community engagement in. And what, you know, we really want to make sure we're using the consultant when they can consult in the highest and best use for us. So one of the things is having them do those stakeholder interviews, having the consultant do the peer benchmarking, but having, you know, our staff do partner interviews, because that's where we want the long-term relationship. So, you know, I think one of the things where when we started this, we knew we had a high level kind of roadmap and it would have some costs, and we've been watching, you know, what our consultant spend rate has been. And, you know, really wanting to be thoughtful about, you know, taking the time we need, extending over the summer, because we just knew that engagement was going to be longer. So I think I wouldn't say necessarily that we didn't forecast the budget right. I think we knew the variables and have been really thoughtful about tracking the variables as we've come to the end of phase one and are really starting to do the work of what phase two looks like.
My only hesitancy would be I would not want to see the library get in a position where they're frequently going to city council and saying, oh, we have another exception. So that needs to be done fairly carefully.
I very much agree.
Any other thoughts?
I support, I just going through a similar assessment process at the moment and working with contractors and understanding the balance between staff capacity and contractor capacity. This is not unusual by any means in my experience and having done these a few times myself. So while I appreciate the caution and the wanting to present it appropriately to council, I also have been through this a few times and know that this is kind of part and parcel of iterating while you're going and figuring out what you need while you need it. So I support and don't find this kind of out of tune with my own experiences working with consultants.
So I think you're saying that when phase two has more definition, there'll be another request like this.
And that we forecasted in council. When we went to council with this, we were very clear, here's what phase one is, and phase two will be coming back.
Okay, yeah, I think that needs to be kind of teed up again this time too. So I say we move forward.
We need to move approve.
So we have to have a motion on this one.
I move that we approve the interim budget request for $75,000 to complete phase one.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Okay, the next up is a discussion of the library website.
Hi, so Carrie brings that up, the other Carrie will say hello. I'm Carrie from the Office of Community Engagement. Jessica introduced us at the beginning, but I am very excited to be here. I started at the city about 7 years ago, brought in to kind of help with the websites. At the time, it's embarrassing to admit, the library website was like the stellar one in our portfolio. And well, I'm very glad to be here to say that unfortunately, it's not the stellar one anymore, but let's get it back to that place. So I'm going to talk to you through where we're going with this project and what our hopes are to do with that, and then open it up with any questions you may have. So I'm also excited that I get to follow presentation from the strategic planning crew. Because I think what you'll start to see is the information we just gathered from the over 2,000 people that took the survey. We knew that was an intentional step to kind of say, let's put some brakes on this website project when we're going to go out and talk to all these people and get mountains of information that will help us build a better web experience. So in the data that was just shared, I'm looking at it kind of like, oh, okay, what does this mean for the web? So you'll see a couple other slides that came out of that. But before we get started, I wanted to just reflect a minute and share a little bit about myself. These are pictures of my family, and also Kate, you're on here a few years ago. So when I was asked to come and present to you, I started thinking about, hey, what's the library mean to me? And what has my experience been shaped by? So this is my son reading to a therapy dog. It's actually probably my favorite memory of having children. He walked in and we were like, oh, you can read to a dog. You want to do that? He's 3. He could not read at this point. And he walked over to the shelf and he grabbed Brown Bear, personal family favorite, actually in Spanish. We don't speak Spanish, but he read the entire thing from cover to cover. And like this moment, like when I was looking back on it, I'm like, that's part of what a library can do for us. You know, it's going into the library book sale and being able to then, now I've learned, support BCAF because we do that, and coming home with armloads of books, to participating in BCAF a number of years ago and making unicorn tales, to exploring the technology, thanks to Kate, who brought it, to Bring Your Child to Work Day and learning like, oh, the library is much more than just books, what we often all think about. So to me, it's about moments, memories, and experiences, and they don't need to live just in the walls of these buildings. Our website should be delivering those safe types of moments for people who are interacting with us. So we provide service at 5 locations across the city, and we provide fantastic service, as we learned. You know, from Maine, Collister, Colon Eustick, Hillcrest, and Bound, we are putting smiles on faces. We're opening people's minds. People are experiencing new things. I learned from Carrie earlier today, we've had nearly 500,000 patron visits just this year so far, 1.2 million books checked out. It's incredible. We actually have a 6th branch. It's the website. This is the #1 place that people should be coming and learning about what the library has to offer, interacting, actually getting information if they aren't able to actually physically show up. It is our welcome mat for new people to Boise. It's their introduction for many of them to Boise Public Library, and we want it to be spectacular, just like the experience when they come into the building. And also, when a website is built correctly, and I will acknowledge that what we have right now has not been maintained to the point where we can like be agile and keep it up. But unlike buildings, when we decide we want to make a change to a building, it takes a lot of work. There's building permits, there's usually a lot of money, there's stuff that has to be done. Websites, we should be able to be a little more quickly and agile and make some updates. So as our community grows and we have new things we want to offer, having a website that we can like plug those into easily will really set us up for the future. So our 6th branch, just for you to kind of know what we see, this is data for this last year. We've had nearly 600,000 sessions, 220,000 users. They're viewing over 1 million pages. And of that, 48% of it is coming in on mobile devices, which is actually, I think, reported a little low because in this data is also all the computers you see in the buildings. So they take a lot, but 48%, we need to do better on mobile devices. Our sites are not spectacular there. And then the top pages are our home, locations, and calendars. You'll probably, if you think about the site, be a little surprised that you're not seeing the catalog in these numbers. It is much higher, but the way our analytics report, it's technically the catalog is a separate thing from the website. Most people don't really know that, and that's intentional to make it feel like you're all in one experience, but that's what's happening. So let's go into a little bit of the data. So as we already talked about, which location do your members use the most? Arguably, what the website's going to help with is that pink bar, online only. Let's like make sure that experience is great, but it also should be supplementing the people that come into the buildings. And I would say the green bar at the very top. People who aren't using the library, let's start introducing them to the library. What can we be doing? Those people that may be searching some things that we could start introducing some library content, let them be familiar with what you have. Phil spoke about people don't know. Let's help them know and then have that library website be the portal for them to learn and explore and eventually find themselves into the buildings. How frequently Do you use the Boise Public Library? What I love about this slide is the people who are online website and apps are actually using it more frequently. They're their daily and weekly users. So that's important for us to know from a content perspective. We can't just have the same thing on the homepage for 4 months at a time. If people are coming and visiting daily and weekly, it's a great place to start introducing new things, having it changing up so they're exploring things. How does your household receive information about the website? As someone who works in digital communication, these types of slides make me so happy. I'm like, yes, they use the website. Great. It's like far and away the biggest thing. But again, it goes to, we got to make sure that we're doing something there that is engaging. We offer so many fantastic programs and services at the library that if they're just coming and seeing the same thing, and then they're just going into the catalog and reserving something and leaving, we are missing an opportunity to teach them more about what we do. So how can we be ensuring that the website that we build is going to do that for them? So some of the background, well, what are you going to do about it? Let's do a project. So we have Becca Gray sitting in the back here as a fantastic project manager here at the city of Boise. She's going to make sure it actually goes somewhere, which is great, keeps us on track. So we have, if you've been in project management land, some of these bubbles will seem really familiar. Right now, we're in the discovery phase. This is where we're kind of learning what we need. We want to make sure we clearly identify what's in scope, what's out, so that we don't have to keep coming back for money or different things that can sometimes happen when that's not clearly on the table. Also, as I mentioned, the catalog is presented on the website. There's a lot of integrations in the library website with third-party things. So we've got the catalog, we've got the calendar for all of the different programs that we offer. We have the how people can reserve meeting room. Those need to all seamlessly work with the website. So we have to make sure we have a good inventory of that so we know what we're building and trying to create. From discovery, we're going to move into research. We're going to work with the strategic planning team and really dig into what that information is, but also look at our analytics. We will do some stakeholder interviews. You'll see that there's a pink box. That's where we're going to invite all of you into those conversations. From there, we'll move into user experience, which is where we start deciding what's the architecture of the site. So essentially, what's the navigation? How does it work? And we'll start wireframing, which I always say is basically you take a Sharpie and you draw a website like on a piece of paper. That's what a wireframe is, kind of get to what the functionality is, how things might look and feel. Then we move into user interface, which is usually where everyone gets most excited. This is design. How do we make sure so that the library comes through really strong, but it's also a site that people can figure out how to use. So a few years ago, we did a huge project for cityofboise.org where we incorporated about 30 websites into one seamless experience. How can we leverage some of the things we learned from that project into this experience, but still ensure that it's the library and the library brand stands strong? We'll make sure we're coming back to you so you can see what that looks like and is feeling good and all of that. Then we'll build it. And this is where I'm going to say Alex's team does magic. I don't really think about the technology piece. So it will be the technology stack will all get built. And then also from a content side, all of that, I'm going to look at Jamie, because a lot of that will be in Jamie's area where we will start to build the content so that we can go live, and then we'll go live. Put a pink dot there because number one, I hope you'll all use it. But number two, kind of like what I think I heard from how you helped with the strategic planning is that this is something you all will be super proud of as board members. Yes, check this out. And you're going to let everyone know about it. So that's kind of a high level from the project. Then to round it out, there was a question on the survey that said, where do you see the library making the biggest impact from the community in the future? And I just did a little word cloud of some of the stuff that came forward. And I love that it's like library and community, but we have access, information, books, resources, education, and learning. And again, what I see with those words are opportunities for our sixth branch to really help kind of support the work that our incredible team is doing. And that's what this project will help for. So with that, we're both here for questions.
It's a very clear presentation and well done, well prepared and well given. I don't have a whole lot of questions after that.
I'm having a little trouble understanding the scope. So I guess the homepage is in scope, but maybe the catalog's not. Can you
Probably the slide.
explain any of that? Of what's in the project and what's not?
Yes, I can. I had to reboot my computer.
Well, I've got another question.
I'm waiting for it to come up, but that is a whole other question. So we do have the high level buckets of scope identified right now. And I'm stalling for this to load so then I can.
Well, and I can
Speak
say
out of
this, like,
turn.
we can't overhaul the catalog.
Yeah, I mean, we are dependent on our vendor for the catalog itself. One of the things that was approved in the 23 budget is a discovery layer to actually help with the searching on the catalog. That is one of the biggest pain points, searching has evolved to the point where if you right now in our catalog, you have to have the exact characters. So if you misspell like Guggenheim, it doesn't say to you like, did you mean this? Like you have to have it exactly right. So adding this discovery layer one is going to be huge in just navigatability of our catalog. But that is, as Carrie mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of third-party resources that we need to seamlessly integrate.
Yeah, and so we will make sure, what I usually call in Carrie language, I don't think this is an industry term in any way, I call those like handshakes. How do we ensure that there's a smooth transition from the website into another application that's like, or sometimes the user may not even know. Like, I honestly, if you use the catalog right now, I don't even think you're not on the website. The way you can usually tell is if you look at the URL, but sometimes we'll even like mask that to users. But how do we kind of seamlessly hand people in there so that they're able to explore it? It feels part of a cohesive experience. We will work on that. But if there are major problems with that out of the box product, unfortunately, this project is not going to fix that. That doesn't mean we can't identify it and then begin working to try to fix that.
Yeah, because I guess I'm wondering whether the scope should be the website or whether the scope should be the digital branch.
Can you say more about that? I'm not sure.
Well, like one of those pain points for me is when I try to use the New York Times and all online, it's extremely painful. Because every day I have to go in and log in again and get set up. And so if the focus is the website, I think you're gonna say, well, we hand it off to the New York Times and whatever happens, happens. But if the focus is the digital branch, it's much more about keeping people satisfied with the library as an online presence.
Yeah, so I can speak to that just a little bit. It's not good news. But there is some of that yes, I think we can try to make a little bit more seamless, but actually the New York Times points to how we have it on our website and shows other libraries, you should do it this way as well. Because we've tried to make it as seamless as possible within the parameters that they've set on what their contract is. And the Wall Street Journal functions the same way. So I don't know that we could build in an integration that would make it to overcome what they are intentionally making a painful process because they want people to subscribe individually.
My assumption was that it includes everything I see when I go to the website. Whatever link I click on, it delivers me to that link. We're going to redo all that work, as well as offer whatever new functionality we can offer that meets the needs that we've been discussed that you identified, which I'm totally behind. I'm really in agreement with the comment you made. It's nice that we offer the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, but I pay subscriptions for those because I want fast service and I want to be on it hours a day. It's not going to magically turn into that kind of service to the website. It's not possible. Otherwise, the New York Times and Wall Street Journal would have to have their heads examined.
So I guess at a high level, this is really critical work, I think. I mean, if COVID taught us anything, and if we learned anything over the last 10 years, this digital experience is really, really important to the library. So I like what you're saying about agility. The digital world demands that, I think. And we have to be in a position to provide it. I'm very concerned, actually. We started talking about launching a website project, something like 6 or 9 months ago. And we're in discovery. And so it doesn't bode well for that agility. I'm curious, like, if you look at this, well, where do you think go live is from where we're sitting today?
We have a lot to learn in discovery is what I would say that can help us figure out kind of better timelines. Another piece of this is we're figuring out and contracting for the different resources to support this. For example, we don't have UX designers on staff at the city, for example. So we're speccing that out and we'll be contracting out to do the design piece of it. We're also considering whether or not we're going to contract out some development, which can either increase or decrease the speed, just depending on how the scope of the project. So this discovery piece is absolutely vital to being able to come back to you with a better timeline. That doesn't sound so squishy, is what I'm saying is squishy right now. Another piece I'd just like to emphasize is what Carrie said, which is to say, we have a tremendous target of opportunity with your strategic planning process being right here. So some work was purposely deferred a little bit to get that data in so that we could leverage it for the discovery and design process. So that said, we also had resourcing challenges. So it's not just because of that, but from an IT department, I would love to, I absolutely love this project. And I know that my team is super excited to do it. One of the things I'd also like to share is that I've been at the city for 11 months. I guess my 1-year anniversary is coming up at the start of the fiscal year. And one of the things I'm working on with my team is the agility piece. And I would say that right now at the city, the center of gravity is a project. There are a lot of projects. That's how they're funded, how work is often funded. And so we're looking at ways that how can we do a lot of things more quickly versus have to wait for a huge effort and then 10 years later, another huge effort, and then 10 years later, another huge effort. So that to me is not the definition of agility. And I'm going to do my best as the Chief Information Officer to start doing this instead of this. It's really, really important with our communications, our platforms, our touch points with our user base. I come most recently from a product company. And if we updated the website every 10 years, we would have been out of business. So I'm committed to working on that. And I know that the proof is in the pudding. So I can't wait to start this thing and full force, get it fully resourced and up and running. So we'll have better dates. Becca, like you said, it's a fabulous project.
Do you think it's reasonable to expect a new website in the next fiscal year?
Yeah, I think that's highly reasonable.
And I don't quite understand how the budgeting for this would work. Like, does it show up in her budget or yours? And like, what's the budget for it next year?
So Jessica and I are both learning about city budgeting, by the way.
Yeah, it will come into the Office of Community Engagement budget. The Office of Community Engagement oversees the website portfolio for the city of Boise, so that we're looking at it from like the community experience of how the digital experience for Boiseans and people interacting with us. So it will come into that. And there has been money that we have marked for this project. It would have been an iterative thing. We're like, we are holding some. As we get through discovery, we will determine that if I were a betting person, we're going to need more. And then we will go forward with that. But this has been a project that has been already marked with some money and said, yes, go. So to your point of like, yes, did we talk about it 6 to 9 months ago? Yes, And I, as one of the main resources on this project, having done the work I did on the City of Boise web portfolio, I started to hear what was happening because Jamie and I were talking on strategic planning. And I was like, I can't, there's two groups of people that I was really looking out for. One was our community. We're going to ask people a whole bunch of questions about the website. And then we're going to come back probably 6 months later and ask them a whole bunch of strategic planning questions. And I didn't want people to not want to answer one of them because we just asked them about the other. And the team. The staff is working incredibly hard on the strategic planning effort. They're going to also work very hard on the website. And how can I make sure that that's not all on top of each other while they're doing the ultimate job, which is serving our community? So how can we make sure that we're doing that in the right cadence and at the right time and leverage everything so that we get the best product? I know that it stinks because what we have out there right now is not the best welcome mat for us. But we're going to end up getting something so much better because of a little delay in time. That's my commitment.
What's your budget figure?
Right now it's 25,000. Which is why I say I don't know.
Yeah, you're gonna need a lot more.
Yeah, well, I think that was spec after the design. That was the design, that was the discovery and
It's
design.
the first little
Yeah,
bit.
that's the little bit. Yeah, that's that piece.
It's the piece to make it real.
Yeah, exactly. And
And
get
then
the wireframes.
And it was also before we knew, quite honestly, some of these discussions predate both of the directors sitting at the table. I did not know, we did not know what the state of really on the IT side would be from development and all of that and what kind of resources we might need. So now we have the right people that can help us answer that and then help us go.
I can't wait to upgrade our back end. Super nerdy, but I'm really excited to.
Your big this versus little this's analogy mean we're constantly in little this mode going forward. In other words,
Project wise.
we had a website that was new and state of the art and got stale and no
Yes.
enhancement was made to it. If you're in little this mode constantly, you're never falling into the dark ages.
Absolutely. And one of the pieces that I want to make sure is in the end state description of this is that it's easy to update by content editors, by the people that work at the library. So is that in there?
Yeah, that is in there.
Okay,
Actually.
fabulous. Which we can set things up so that they're easier to do the little bits over time. So yes, that is going to be part of the design of this particular website. When we created this 10 years ago, I had to go back and look at when it was created. It's 10 years ago now. It was, like Carrie said, the preeminent website for the city. And now we've learned a lot and been doing this for a lot longer. So yes, we're gonna do it that way. Becca, did you have something that you looked up and wanted to share?
I was late to the game there with the, it was relevant to the catalog system, but I think we hit on that for the most part. There is that update coming that, but getting an entirely new catalog system is not.
You explained to me why it's so difficult to use though.
I did, yes.
I didn't understand.
Yep. That will be, when that's put in place, that will be a remarkable improvement for searching.
What else? Anything?
Anything else?
The group wants to bring up?
Well, I just want to thank you both because I really do believe this, we're in a great spot now. We really have the right approach, the right team, and the right sequencing. So to both Carrie and Alex's point, we are being strategic in timing, but also really in both what we want to deliver in the user experience on the website, but how do we make sure that we're also addressing the back end issues as well.
We've done a lot of learning on all the additional apps over the last 10 years too, right? So when we designed this, we didn't have all of those extra services that we offer today. So this is a fun opportunity to be able to design the website knowing all of that, right? So I used to live in a house in DC that we call the hodgepodge house because it's like 100 years old. And it started out like just a little tiny box, and then they built on the upstairs and they built this and they built this. I'm not saying that's what the library website is, but we did build all these different components over the last years. It'll be nice to kind of like, okay, these are all the things. Let's start over. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Okay, some housekeeping. We need to approve a set of, meeting dates for the coming year. Those were distributed in the packet. I believe these are all Wednesdays, is that correct?
This is correct. This continues the cadence of meeting the second Wednesday of each month at 11:30.
One editorial here is I've always been confused about how long the meeting lasts. And I would like to propose that we schedule 11:30 to 1 and endeavor to finish by 1. I'm not sure a 1-hour meeting is sufficient. But I know that lots of people have other things to do before and after this, so if we schedule around 11:30 to 1, I think that would be a good compromise. We have to have a motion on the meeting date, since it's a public forum. Are these acceptable to the trustees?
I move that we approve the proposed scheduled library board meeting dates for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Okay, the next item is that we're required by statute and bylaws and legal counsel to pick a board president and vice president each year. As I understand the bylaws, a person can be an officer for 2 consecutive years. And then I think it's a good thing in that, rotating that around is a really good thing. And we have a lot of new members on the board. We have a couple of other members who really haven't been here that long. So I wouldn't consider time on the board as a factor in any of this. I think it's all fair game for everybody. Any other comments from other board members on this topic? I know I haven't done any work to line up anything ahead of time, so whatever happens, I'm fine with. So I think the first order of business would be to have nominations for the president of the board. If anybody would care to propose one.
I thought that Brian was maybe willing to serve as president. Is that something on your radar?
I'm definitely willing.
Okay.
I've always been a little nervous that only my 13th board meeting. I still feel like I'm in the learning.
You're an old pro.
And then Phil, I didn't know what's your sort of availability or willingness
Whatever the
as
trustees
the
want.
longest
I
serving.
I'm not, how do I say this? It's not like I have any particular need or desire other than if people want me to help out, I would. I do have some new time commitments coming up, but there's always time for this.
So for clarity, are you interested in continuing to serve in the role you've been serving in for temporarily?
I'm very neutral on it.
Jessica, can you share for us just a little bit for this specific board? sort of the duties and the time commitment differentiation between the president and the vice president positions?
The person that serves as the president is the person who I work with most directly. And that does have a higher time commitment. That person is the person who I go through the agenda, both, the week before the monthly meeting, but also sort of as a cadence of like, when do we do different discussions? And quite frankly, the last two board presidents were also on a speed dial with the director about COVID. There are definitely times where I've had to text a president and say, I need to talk to you today. And also Christine, who was interim, actually did that even more than I needed to. That has been less recently, but there are issues where I do need to get a hold of a board president because we've got something that needed, either something staffing related or service related or discussions in the community that I need to get a hold of the president and really quickly say like, hey, I need the board to know something, and that person also then does serve as my coach in, how we're gonna have some of these discussions, how am I doing as a leader, has that real outward, I ask them to do more work with our staff as well. And so I would say first that the higher time commitment is that board president role just because of the role they play with me personally. The vice president kind of has to be ready to step into that and to serve in some cases where if we know there's a conflict in a month where a board president won't be available, that vice president steps in and does that role. So sometimes they'll join meetings and then does that same role in the meeting itself. Did that answer your question? Okay.
That's really helpful. I mean, I'm certainly willing to serve in either role as well. What I will say is I always think it's good if we have a vice president that's willing to then step into the president's role. I don't think it's been necessarily operating it that way in the past. So I think that would be nice just for transition and kind of keeping the leadership moving. And that's that person who's sort of almost a president in training. I think is always a good way for that to function. So that's almost like a 2-year commitment at the outset. If someone's willing to do that. I don't know. I know you both are new. I don't know kind of what your thoughts are.
I'm one of these people that has a hard time saying no in a lot of ways. So I'm always willing. I have what they call helium hand. When you ask for volunteers, my hand just floats up and then I find myself volunteering for things. I'm always willing to step in, obviously, as a vice president type thing first, because I really like the idea of a president in training. I really like that. I think it makes for a much smoother transition. I've sat on other boards where that seems to work well, but I'm always willing. I mean, I live and breathe in the world of libraries. You can tell behind me. I've been hearing traffic all in my own library, all during break here during the meeting. So something I'm passionate about too. So I'm always willing to help in any way.
I think you said you're generally willing as well, or?
Absolutely. I would have interest in a vice president position because I've been to 3 meetings. But do have quite a bit of past board experience and deep appreciation, passion, slightly different sector perspective bringing to this, but certainly I think relevant. So that helps.
So I don't know, I guess I'll just throw out, Brian, if you're interested in serving as president, I'm concerned about timing with my work schedule and availability, especially during the day. So if you're willing, maybe I'll nominate Brian and you as vice president.
We'll do them one at a time.
Okay, well, I'm gonna nominate Brian Bunny for president.
A second. So, I think we can just do a voice vote, is that right?
Yes.
So all those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Brian is our new board president. I'll give you all the things.
That was fast.
I would like to nominate Rebecca for the vice president.
Second,
All those in favor of the motion?
aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, we have a president and a vice president. Excellent. Look forward to the next year. By the way, your pay does not include. Okay, I think the bylaws of the library were distributed in the packet, and that outlines just a few things about the terms. I don't actually think we have time to really go through and discuss any changes or amendments.
I just have a comment. I've been sort of poking at this
Yeah.
numerous meetings across my 13 meetings. Because the statute is pretty clear in spelling out the powers and duties, and it lists 12 of them specifically and then expands on them. They're not as clear in the bylaws. And in some cases, there's some omissions from what's in the statute, what's in the bylaws. And I feel like the statute is what we're assigned as a responsibility and held accountable to. And in our hyper-partisan age, I think there's some risk in not making sure that we're adhering to the statute. So I do think it needs work. I don't think we need to review it now as you propose, but I think it needs some thoughtful work.
Okay, I think that's a good point. The only thing I've noticed is that I think it's a little weird that in this last year, we had an example where the president left on June 30th. And we don't have an election of a new president until September. And if it were possible, in conformance with the statute, I was wondering if we could bring the election of officers up to June so that when somebody leaves, there's no gap. Now, that only happens once every 5 years, but I don't know, just a thought. But I think what you're raising is far more important. Is there any particular thing that you would point out as an example of where there's a gap that needs?
The reason I asked the question of whether when we sign the vouchers, is our trustee's signature required before any money is paid? Is it's clear in the statute that we're supposed to maintain control. The only way we can do that is if we have some sort of approval over something. And that the expenditure can be made prior to signature being affixed to endorse the payment. There is no control. It's a review process.
Well, okay. I think another side of that might be that if we approve the budget and it's within the budget, then it's okay. I just wonder, I mean, if they couldn't pay anything every week until we looked at that and signed that, I wonder what kind of constraints would that put on the staff?
Well, I don't know that the week delay is a lot of delay for accounts payable. The budget process we've kind of all grown into this year. I think Jessica made a good effort to pull us into the budgeting process this year to a greater extent than my impression is we have been in the past. But the statute makes it clear that they want a lot of involvement in the budgeting process by the board.
Well, so there's lots of food for thought in here. I would propose that we come back to this next month, I suppose, and take a look at it.
Is there any way we can get a rolling head start on this before next year? I'm wondering, Nikki, if you'd be willing to work with me or someone else on.
Yeah, I would have the same thought is maybe we have sort of a little subcommittee working with city legal on proposed revisions. And I'd be happy to help with that. And we could propose some revisions and send them through Ed and come back with that to the next meeting.
So one of the things I would need some help with is you have the Idaho statute, which is a pretty firm thing. What role do the bylaws play in the context of having those statutes? What's the point?
Yeah, I had a similar question. I don't know if, Ed, if you can speak to that from other public entities. The bylaws is sort of your internal governance, like we're gonna meet at these times and this is, maybe we're gonna use Robert's rules and more just your internal board playbook, sort of. So it should be consistent with the statutes, but in my mind and how I usually think of it is you would more generally reference, the powers are as provided by statute, for example. So it should be consistent, not respelling it, and more sort of your internal, this is how we're gonna operate, not.
Okay.
Whereas in the corporate context where, a general corporation might, we can do anything, it'll have a little more to it.
And
I don't know if that's.
I think there's some element of the statute spells out what's required at a minimum. And the bylaws can do things in addition to, for example, the statute says we must meet once a quarter. We meet monthly, and that's described in the bylaws. And there's other examples of a similar nature in the bylaws.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna have a subcommittee then of you two with Ed and take a look and see where you think some updates are appropriate. Is that correct?
Is it possible for us to get a Word version of the bylaws that we can play around with?
I'll find out.
Thank you.
I believe so.
Anything else on that topic? Okay. I think next up is a trustee to review the vouchers. Do you have a proposed name for that?
I think it's Lenny.
You okay with that, or do you want to delay? You want to swap with somebody?
I'm retired. Every day's a Saturday.
Well, we only work on Mondays and Fridays, so Okay. Our next planned meeting is October 12th. It'd be at 11:30. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, could we get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I will second. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Good meeting. Lots to consider today.